Right. Welcome to the deep dive. You know the drill. We take a whole bunch of sources, articles, research, our own notes, and basically pull out the most important bits, the key insights, just for you. And today, we're doing a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, but also, well, honestly, quite unsettling.
Yeah.
We're looking at the bizarre and extreme punishments from ancient Rome. We've gone through a stack of historical accounts, and the mission really is to get you a shortcut to understanding this specific kind of dark corner of history.
That's right. Because ancient Rome, it was so much more than just, the togas and the aqueducts everyone pictures.
Yeah, the highlights reel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was a society built very deliberately on order, on power, and maybe most importantly for this topic, on public spectacle. Their legal system wasn't just laws on paper.
No.
It was this complex mix. Strict laws, yes, but also a really rigid social hierarchy and this huge element of public performance.
And that's key, isn't it? The performance aspect. Punishments weren't just about, well, justice, as we might think of it.
Not at all.
They were tools, really important tools for sending powerful messages. Basically, turning the criminal into a public lesson.
A very graphic lesson, actually.
They really had a flair for the dramatic, didn't they? Applying the law. As we get into these examples, you'll see why bizarre is, the only word. They took justice, or maybe vengeance is better, to a whole other level, an unforgettable one. So let's unpack it.
Okay, where to start? Maybe the most infamous crucifixion.
Right.
We've all heard of it, obviously. But for the Romans, this was pretty common, actually. A brutal sort of go-to punishment,
Right.
but mainly reserved for who they saw as the absolute lowest of the low.
Slaves, rebels.
Slaves, rebels, foreigners, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, outside the core Roman citizenry, generally.
So it wasn't just about causing death, was it? What made it so uniquely horrific and such a public thing for them?
Exactly. It wasn't just about ending a life. The bizarre nature, the Roman nature of it came from it being designed specifically for prolonged suffering and profound public shame. Victims were nailed, sometimes tied to a wooden cross, and just left there, left to die slowly from, exhaustion, dehydration, suffocation.
Over days, sometimes.
Sometimes over days, yeah.
Yeah.
The agony, the slow, drawn-out agony was absolutely part of the message.
That public theater idea you mentioned, how did making it so visible, how did that actually work to control people in such a huge empire?
Well, they literally made it part of the landscape of control. Crosses weren't hidden away. They were put up along busy roads. The Appian Way is the famous example.
Right.
Where thousands of people would pass by every day. They could see it, they could jeer, they could absorb the message. It was a constant visual reminder of Roman power, a sort of grim billboard.
Billboard of Roman power. That's a chilling phrase. And the Spartacus example really drives that home, doesn't it? After his rebellion, 71 BCE.
Yeah, the accounts say 6,000 of his followers, mostly slaves.
6,000.
6,000. Crucified along the Appian Way, their bodies apparently stretched for miles. Just imagine that sight.
It's almost unthinkable. And what's really striking, you mentioned this, the Romans sometimes got, creative with it.
They did. It wasn't always the standard T or X shape we imagine.
Really?
Sometimes victims were crucified upside down. St. Peter is the famous traditional example.
Mm-hmm.
Or even on crosses bent into unusual shapes, seemingly just to maximize the suffering or the visual horror.
Just pure cruelty for its own sake, almost.
Or, maybe more accurately, cruelty as a demonstration of absolute power, control over the body, the mind, even the form of death itself. It amplified the message.
Okay, speaking of agonizing and creative in the most disturbing way,
Yeah.
let's talk about Poena Cullei, the punishment of the sack.
The sack, reserved for a very specific crime.
Parricide.
Killing your parents or close relatives.
Exactly. Which the Romans considered one of the absolute worst things you could possibly do. An offense against nature, against the gods, against the state itself.
And the punishment itself.
Yeah.
It's just mind-bogglingly specific.
It really is.
Yeah.
Horrifyingly so. The guilty person was sewn into a big leather sack. Okay.
But not alone.
Right. This is the bit.
Inside the sack with them, they put a dog,
Eh.
a rooster, a viper,
Oh.
and a monkey.
A dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey. Why? I mean, what on earth was the thinking behind that specific menagerie of terror?
Well, historians can only really hypothesize, But the thinking seems to be, it wasn't just about drowning them.
Yeah.
It was symbolic. A complete unmaking of the person. Stripping them of their humanity, throwing them into this chaotic, animalistic void before death.
Like erasing them.
Exactly. Each animal might have represented something chaos and purity, maybe specific offenses against the family. That's debated. But imagine the final moments. The dog biting, the rooster pecking, the viper strike.
And the monkey.
And the monkey.
Yeah.
Maybe just adding to the sheer terror and, well, the grotesque madness of it all.
Unbelievable. And then the sack was just thrown into water.
Thrown into a river or the sea. So a chaotic, terrifying drowning amidst this animal frenzy.
It sounds like the ultimate degradation.
It was meant to be. It was very rare, apparently, but infamous. You see it mentioned by writers like Cicero. Emperor Nero supposedly used it. It carried huge symbolic weight for this unforgivable crime.
Okay, if the sack was kind of uniquely bizarre and symbolic, then damnatio ad bestias.
Oh.
That was more like public spectacle, right? Condemnation to the beasts.
Oh, absolutely. This was a Roman equivalent of a gruesome blockbuster movie.
Where the actors don't make it to the sequel.
Precisely. This became a huge form of public entertainment. Criminals, and often this included Christians during periods of persecution, or political enemies, they were thrown into the big arenas.
Like the Colosseum.
Like the Colosseum, yeah. With lions, bears, leopards, wild animals, and the crowds would watch. They cheer. Oh, yes. It was entertainment.
And they didn't just, like, toss them in, did they? Or they staged it.
They did. It could be quite elaborate. Prisoners might be tied to poles, bears let loose. Sometimes they'd even dress victims up as figures from mythology.
Like Orpheus.
Like Orpheus, exactly. Only instead of charming the beast with music, he'd be torn apart. It was this dark theatrical inversion.
What did that do for the people watching, beyond just, the bloodlust?
Well, it reinforced the idea of Roman power. Power over nature, power over their enemies, power over life and death itself. It was a very curated display of dominance.
But it didn't always go to plan.
No, and that adds another layer. There are accounts, like from the martyrdom of St. Perpetua around 203 CE, where the animals just wouldn't attack.
Really? They just refused?
Sometimes, yeah. They'd have to be prodded with spears or goaded into attacking. It shows this sort of unpredictable element, even in these carefully staged spectacles. Nature didn't always cooperate with the script.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Still chilling, but in a different way. The Vestal Virgins.
Ah, yes. Rome's sacred priestesses.
Their job was keeping the eternal flame of Vesta burning, super important. And they took this incredibly strict vow of chastity.
A vow that was absolutely central to Roman religious life and the perceived safety of the state.
And breaking that vow, the punishment was uniquely horrifying, wasn't it?
It was. Live burial.
Live burial, just explain how that worked.
It was designed, again, for maximum psychological dread, not just death. The Vestal found guilty was taken to a small underground chamber. Inside, there'd be a bed, a lamp, and just a tiny bit of food and water.
Just enough.
Just enough to prolong the process, to make her aware of her fate as the entrance was sealed. Left alone in the dark to die.
Why that method? Why not something quicker or bloodier?
The religious reasoning was crucial here. It was considered taboo, sacrilegious, to shed the blood of a Vestal Virgin directly.
So this was a loophole.
A kind of ritualistic loophole, exactly. By walling her up, they weren't technically killing her with violence. Her death was attributed to the gods, or starvation or suffocation within the sacred earth. It preserved a kind of ritual purity, even in punishment.
That is twisted logic. And what about her lover, if she had one?
His fate was very different. Typically, he'd be taken to a public place and whipped to death.
Whipped to death publicly, while she's buried alive privately. What does that difference tell us about Roman justice, especially around gender?
It screams hypocrisy, doesn't it? Roman society generally tolerated, even expected, a degree of promiscuity from men, especially elite men.
Right.
But a Vestal's purity was non-negotiable. It wasn't just a personal failing. It was seen as a stain on Rome itself, a threat to the city's relationship with the gods. Her body was symbolic public property in a way a man's wasn't. Think of Cornelia, buried alive under Sulla's orders around 73 BCE. It was a very public symbolic cleansing.
Okay, moving from individual crimes, even symbolic ones, to the brute. Decimation.
Ah, the military punishment.
Brutal.
Brutal and bizarre, yeah.
Yeah.
Used against legions that were seen as cowardly or mutinous.
The name itself tells you how it works. Decimatio from the Latin for tenth. Removal of a tenth.
So how did they actually do it?
If a legion performed badly or rebelled, the commanders could order it decimated. The unit, or the guilty part of it, would be divided into groups of 10 soldiers.
Then, within each group of 10, they drew lots. Pure chance. And the one soldier whose lot was drawn,
he was killed.
He was killed by the other 9 members of his own group, his comrades. usually by clubbing or stoning.
By his own friends. Oh my God, the psychological aspect of that. Being forced to kill your comrade, maybe someone you fought beside for years just because of a random draw.
Exactly. The psychological horror was entirely the point. Decimation wasn't really about punishing the one guilty individual. How could it be? It was random.
Right.
It was about instilling collective guilt, collective responsibility, and absolute terror throughout the entire unit. It forced the soldiers to police themselves, essentially, to carry out the punishment on one of their own.
Restoring discipline through fear.
Through sheer terror, yeah. The Roman general Crassus famously used it against Spartacus's forces, or rather his own legions who had failed against Spartacus back in 71 BCE. It was seen as effective, if savage. Kind of the ultimate team-building exercise gone horribly, horribly wrong.
That's one way to put it. Now, not everything was death and dismemberment, right? The Romans were also apparently big fans of public shaming.
Oh, definitely. Not all punishments were fatal. For lesser crimes, humiliation was key. You might see someone paraded through the streets wearing a sign.
Like a sandwich board.
Sort of, yeah. Detailing their crime, like you said, almost like an ancient form of cancel culture, making their shame public knowledge.
And physical humiliation, too.
Yes. Thieves might be branded on the hand, a permanent mark of their crime, or they could be forced to wear something called a furca.
A furca.
Yeah, basically a heavy forked wooden yoke or collar placed around the neck and shoulders. Uncomfortable, restricting, and very visible. It marked you out immediately as a wrongdoer.
And then there was exile, which, compared to being eaten by lions or sewn in a sack, sounds almost mild.
It sounds mild, but for a Roman, it could be devastating. It wasn't just being sent away. It often meant being stripped of your Roman citizenship, your rights, your status, everything that defined you in that society, and you'd be sent to some remote, miserable island, often, like Panditaria.
So total isolation.
Total isolation, loss of status, loss of connection. In a society obsessed with status, family, and belonging like Rome was, that was its own kind of torture, a living death in a way.
Emperor Augustus even exiled his own daughter, Julia, didn't he? For her behavior.
He did, to Panditaria initially. No lions, no sacks, no clubs, but a profound, lasting erasure from Roman life. A very potent punishment for someone of her standing.
So pulling this all together, why? Why were the Romans so over the top, so creative in their cruelty? It clearly wasn't just about simple an eye for an eye retribution.
No, it went much deeper. You have to remember the scale of the Roman Empire. Controlling that vast, diverse territory required more than just laws. It required powerful symbols. Fear was a huge motivator, yes, but also spectacle. These punishments were designed to shock, to humiliate, to embed the power of Rome deep in the public consciousness.
Yeah.
They were performances of state authority. Justice wasn't separate from theater.
So it reflects their core values: order, power, spectacle.
Exactly. Honor, order, hierarchy, the power of the state, the importance of public image.
Yeah.
It's all reflected in how they punish people.
It really does make you wonder about the Roman imagination, though. The sheer inventiveness. I mean, who sits down and seriously suggests, hey, you know what this sax punishment needs? A monkey.
Right. It's that level of specific, almost artistic cruelty that stands out. It speaks volumes about their worldview, their priorities, and maybe their anxieties, too.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it, that history isn't just dates and battles and emperors. It's about the full spectrum of what humans are capable of.
Absolutely. Both incredible ingenuity and profound cruelty. Looking at these practices forces you to think about how societies enforce norms, how power operates.
And how our own ideas about justice and punishment have evolved, or maybe haven't in some ways.
Precisely. Are we fundamentally different today, or are there echoes? Something to think about that relationship between society, justice, and the methods we use to uphold it right across the centuries. What does it all tell us about ourselves then and now?